Now, today, we are in this series. We're going to conclude the series today, There and Back Again, an Awaken tale. Next week, I'll begin a new series about spiritual practices. We'll call it either Rhythms of the Soul or Rhythms of the Heart, because it is February. So either soul or heart. We'll make a determination tomorrow. It depends how I wake up feeling in the morning, I guess. So that will be next Sunday. But today, I titled this sermon, Let's Keep Going. And I did have an exclamation point at the end of that. I'm not sure what happened to it. For some reason, it didn't save. If you're taking notes, this title does have an exclamation point at the end of it. So please make sure that you mark that down, because it gives us a little more emphasis, a little more excitement to the fact that let's keep going together. And what I thought I would do, typically in years past, we have a sermon and then we have the annual meeting portion where we talk about highlights and then goals. But I said, hey, why don't we turn the sermon into the annual meeting portion where we talk a bit about where we've been and where we're going. And one of the things, I don't always talk about this, but one of the things that is important to a church and to the life of Awaken is this idea of giving. And so I thought I would talk about giving and wrap all of this together. And I want to talk about the why behind it. Why do we give? Which I understand few reactions we might have. One might look like this. Please no. I wish I was still in bed. It's cold out. I could have just flipped over. Or maybe it's not that extreme of a reaction, but you're kind of like, do I really want to be here now? Maybe there's a better movie playing in Theater 5. But it's really important to understand this properly, I think, because whenever you talk about giving in churches, there's some great harm that has been done and continues to be done when spiritual communities talk about giving. And I want to talk about sort of the way in which I've come to understand this, and hopefully it helps shed a little light on why this is a part of Awaken and what we do. And in order to talk about giving, I want to go all the way back to the Old Testament. Because oftentimes when you talk about giving in the Old Testament, those two, you're kind of a little bit like, whoa, okay, the thing can go off the rails pretty quickly here. But I want to show you how from very, very early on in the Bible, in the story of God interacting with people, there is this brilliant, revolutionary, and I want to say inspiring reason why God invites his people to give. So let's turn to Exodus chapter 25. And where we find ourselves in the story, the Israelites have left Egypt. They had an encounter with God, or Moses had this encounter with God on Mount Sinai. The 10 Commandments were given, and then God says, now go form a nation. And when you form a nation, when you become a group of free people, because the Israelites, they had been slaves for so long, they didn't know what it meant to be human. And God is saying, as you learn what it means to be human, how to interact with others in a healthy, life-giving way, here's the foundational truths that I want this group of people to be built upon. So, Exodus 25, verse 1, the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to bring me an offering. You are to receive the offering for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. These are the offerings you are to receive from them. And we'll have to check with our treasurer to see which one of these offerings are still okay for us to receive at Awaken. So here's what to bring. Gold, silver, and bronze, blue, purple, and scarlet yarn, kinesio tape, of course, and fine linen, goat hair. Some of you have goat hair in the basement, so please, next Sunday. Ram skins dyed red, another type of durable leather. Acacia wood, olive oil for the light, spices for the anointing oil, and for the fragrant incense. Onyx stones, other gems to be mounted on the ephod and breastpiece. Then have them make a sanctuary for me, and I will dwell among them. Two things for us to look at here in Exodus 25. First, this phrase, receive the offering for me from everyone whose heart prompts them to give. I love this call it a command, call it an invitation. I love it. Because what's the purpose of giving? Or who's to give? All those whose heart desires to give to that which God is building. This is not strong-arming anyone into a particular practice. This is about desire. It is not about guilt. Sometimes church and giving, the way in which it's talked about, can make people feel guilty, can make people feel even shamed into giving to something. But from early on in the story, the reason God invites people to give is because people have been moved in a certain way. Their heart desires to be a part of something. So whosever heart prompts them, inspires them, moves them in a particular way to give, receive that offering. This is about joy. There was a church that I followed for a long time before I started Awaken. They did not have an offering box. Instead, they had a joy box. Giving is about joy, the overflow of your heart. And then here's something else to look at. Then, after all the giving, all the things that have been described, have them being plural, make a sanctuary for me. Everyone together, after all these offerings have been received, well, now let's make a sanctuary. What was the purpose of the sanctuary? To be a continual reminder of God's presence with his people. The Israelites did not have a home at this point in the story. They were nomads in the desert. They built a sanctuary, a tabernacle, that they could carry around with them in the desert. So if they picked up their camp and moved somewhere else, they would pick up the sanctuary as well, and essentially they would bring God with them. Now, I know it sounds silly. Can you really bring God, like put God in your back pocket, like Jiminy Cricket or something like that? But what this was, the purpose of this was so that there would be this constant reminder that wherever you go, God is with you. Anyone else need that reminder on a regular basis? Whatever you're going through, whatever you come across in life, there's this symbol, this reminder that God is present with you. And God's grace, God's love, God's mercy, God's comfort, encouragement, forgiveness is always upon you. This was the purpose of the giving. We talked about last week how Awaken is a place of hope for each of us and for the world. So what this tabernacle is, if we wanted to put it into Awaken terms, what this sanctuary was, what the giving was to produce, was to create an intentional space to serve as a place of, and here's what we looked at last week: safety, refuge, healing, a place of belonging, a place of hope. As we give to Awaken, as we give to this community, what we are doing together is we are creating a space where we can come on a regular basis and be reminded, because sometimes the week knocks it out of you. We've all had those weeks, and so we come week after week to be reminded whatever is going on in our lives, whatever we have been through, wherever we might have blown it this week, God is still for us, and God is still with us. And so our giving goes to creating this intentional space of safety, of healing, of refuge, belonging, and hope for all of us here and for every single person who will step through the doors of Awaken. Let's move a little further along in the story. Deuteronomy chapter, 14, starting in verse 22. Where we are at this point in the story, the Israelites are about to enter into the promised land. So Moses gives a very, very, very long sermon. I know some of you are like, Ted's often like, hey, Dave, you're going too long, I'm going to cut you off. How about Deuteronomy, 40 chapters of a sermon? I mean, Moses had the people there for about 2 days. So anytime you're like, Dave, you're going long, remember Moses giving a 2-day long sermon, and you will be thrilled that you're not sitting here for 2 days. Moses offers this sermon, and again, he talks about giving. And here's what Moses invites, because it's always an invitation. We can say yes, we can say no. It's always this invitation that God is offering us to be a part of the new, the hopeful, the inspiring thing that God is up to in the world. Be sure to set aside 1/10 of all that your fields produce each year. As you acquire this land, as you move into the land, as you farm the land, as you're prosperous in the land, as your land produces fruit and vegetation, be sure that you set aside 1/10 of that the land produces. And then here's what I want you to do with that. Eat the tithe of your grain, new wine and olive oil, and the firstborn of your herds and flocks in the presence of the Lord your God at the place he will choose as a dwelling for his name, so that you may learn to revere the Lord your God always. Here's the setup. What Moses is talking about is a feast. He's talking about a celebration. Most scholars believe that there would have been 3 of these celebrations, 3 of these feasts per year. When Moses is letting the Israelites know, you're about to move into this land, here's how I want you to set things up. He's saying every single year, I want you to have 3 celebrations. 3 massive off-the-hook parties. And I want you to take 1/10 of that which your land has produced, that which you've worked for, in order to essentially saying have a party. Anyone else, you're like, yeah, I could be on board with this. This was an intentional and regular practice. And then Moses says, partake of your tithe in the Lord's presence. It continues. But if that place, talking about the temple, which would have been built in order to worship God, if that place is too far, and I love this part right here, if you have been blessed by the Lord your God and you cannot carry, I kind of envision Scrooge McDuck right here, if you cannot carry your tithe because you have been so blessed by what you have been given, then exchange your tithe for silver, take that silver with you. So if all your radishes and your turnips, if it's just way too much for you to pack up and take with you, well, sell it and then take that which you have earned from that which you've sold and bring that with you to have this massive party with all your friends so you can all celebrate together. Go to the place your Lord God will choose. Use the silver to buy whatever you like. See, oftentimes whenever we think about God, God doesn't want us to actually have joy. We give, but it doesn't necessarily impact me. But yet, what do we find right here in Deuteronomy? Hey, use your silver to buy like whatever party goods you want. You want hats? Great. You want those, what are the streamers or the things that you like, yeah, I don't even know what they're called. You want those? Like, yeah, go to Target and get some of those. You want goat? You're a vegetarian? You want like the best salad ever? You want that fake meat? Like whatever you want to get, whatever you like, use your silver to buy that so you can have the best party that you can imagine. I mean, sometimes look at the Old Testament and God and you're like, whoa, God seems to be a pleasure killer. But when we read right here, it's like God is all about pleasure and joy and partying. There's always a reason why God is inviting his people to act and move in the world in a certain way. And what we find right here, take 1/10 so that you can go and have like this party that the neighbors are like, whoa, what is up with them? Why are they so full of joy? So if you want to buy cattle, sheep, wine, God is a partier. Or other fermented drink, you want that kombucha stuff, like whatever you want, anything you wish, then you and your household shall eat there in the presence of the Lord your God, and you will what? Rejoice. What's the purpose of this offering? Party, celebration, time to enjoy and be reminded of God's provisions. And this might be a time, remember, if there's 3 feasts a year, this might be a time 3 times a year that you see certain family members that don't live close to you. Maybe you have certain friends. Maybe you're a teenager and you ran into that girl the last time you were at the party. You're like, yo, 3 months later, I'm going to see her again. Hopefully she'll remember me. I mean, this is a chance that you have maybe 3 times a year to see people that you care about and don't get to see on a regular daily basis. How about this? What is being described here? It's a group of people using what they have received to create an environment where together as a community they can worship, celebrate, encourage, support, care for, and give thanks together. Another way of describing this, a church. A church. Yeah, when church is operating at its best, it is a party. It's a celebration. It's a time for us to come together to encourage, support, and remind each other about the love that is always with us. Yeah, sometimes you need church because, man, that week has been so hard, and you see some people, you get a hug, you say hi, someone's praying for you, you get a text in the middle of the week from someone. Yeah, it's all about creating this space where together we can journey through life, the ups and the downs, and be reminded that there is always something to place our hope in, that the story isn't over yet. It ends here, Deuteronomy 14, do not neglect the Levites living in your towns. They have no allotment or inheritance of their own. So have this party, but it doesn't end there. The party's not just for you. Like, yeah, here we go. Take a tent now, have a party, do what you wish. But then it doesn't stop there, because this, what you're creating, what you're building together, it can't simply be about you. It must be about others as well. It must also impact those who have not been as blessed as you have been. So don't neglect the Levites, because they have no land of their own. So they can't produce anything. They can't give of what they've been blessed with because they don't have a land to produce fruit and vegetation. So at the end of every 3 years, bring all the tithes of that year's produce, store it in your towns. Create a storehouse so that the Levites and the foreigners, the refugees, those who are away from their homes, who also have no land, no possessions, the fatherless, the orphans, those who have no home, the widows, those who have lost their spouse, who might not be able to make it on their own. Create this storehouse so for all of those who live in your towns may come and eat and be what? Satisfied. So they may have enough as well. You give out of what you have been blessed with, what you have received, so that others will not go hungry. And so that others can be blessed through what your work and hands have produced. And so that the Lord your God may bless you in all the work of your hands. Every 3 years, you give to this storehouse. You build up so that if there is ever anyone in need, they can go to that storehouse and receive that which they need. When we talk about giving, this is early on in the story, the reason that God invites God's people to give. A party, and also so that you can give back to those who are in need. Now, how do we do this at Awaken? Or another question, another way of asking this, what has your generosity gone toward? What have we been involved in together, specifically over this past year? Let's do a 2024 look back. Let's talk about some of the community events that we were involved in. Back in March of last year, almost a year. Thank you to Mary for putting this one together. And my mom was involved in this one. We called it our Kahoot party. And it was a variation of the game Kahoot. And it was an opportunity for us after service to have some food and get to know each other a little better. I was blown away by the turnout. Very, very, it was amazing to see so many of you there at that one, getting to interact and getting a chance to meet some people that I hadn't really spoken with before. Then we had 2 women's luncheons, women's gatherings. And these were, I mean, from what I wasn't at them, but from what I understand, the first one went so well that everyone was like, hey, can we do this one again? Mary Sue kind of led these up also, and it was an opportunity for all the women to get together, and that actually inspired the beginning of a new Bible study. Because of the second women's gathering, many of you were like, hey, let's do something like this on a regular basis, and let's turn it into reading the Bible together so we can study the Bible and learn more together. So the Bible study, even though it started in 2025, the beginning of it, the seeds of the Bible study were at these gatherings in 2024. Then we had our Awaken baristas, Sammy, his wife Mary. Now Sammy and Mary have been a part of Awaken. I mean, Sammy was in my apartment at Columbus Avenue when I started back in 2010. He has been a part of Awaken forever. Last year he was like, hey, we would love to bless Awaken and every now and again come in and make specialty coffee for the group. So they came out a couple times last year. They set up down over here, and we had our coffee, a little more caffeine to go with the party, with the celebration. Then we had our Christmas party last year, John and Christine's, and we had such a good time over there. Everyone brought their favorite meal, brought some food, and it was just a chance for us to get together and celebrate the community of Awaken. Then we had community group at Debbie's house. Debbie has been opening her home now for about, 3 years? 4 years? Oh my goodness. Lose track of time. 4 years, Wednesday evenings, and it is always just such a good time gathering together. We laugh. We get to pray for each other. We pray for many of you. If you're sick, if there are certain needs, we have an opportunity to pray for our church community. We hang out together, we eat cookies, and we talk about the sermon from the previous Sunday. And we did this all through 2024. And I mentioned the Bible study already that is in full swing here in 2025. Then we have our service events that we were involved in. Back in, March or April? I forget exactly when we went. We said, let's not go in the middle of the summer. We used to go in July. We always picked, it was like triple digits. And someone had the brilliant idea, hey, why don't we do this earlier in the year so we don't burn up? So back in March of last year, we were able to go and participate with Harlem Grown. Harlem Grown, as many of you are aware, it was started by Tony Hillary, Mary's husband, and we have now been involved in the great work Harlem Grown has been involved in. I mean, we've been doing that for 4 or 5 years, I think. So it's just about time to go back again. So if you have not gone yet, or if you have gone before, look for that date coming soon because we're going to start putting that on the calendar. Then in November, we had our Stuff a Shirt. And one of the things I love about this picture is how many people there are in this picture, because if you were to look back at the previous couple of years, maybe we had about 3/4 of this picture. So it's been amazing to see the growth that we have had at Awaken over this past year. And one of the other things you'll notice is, I mean, look at this guy right here. I'm going to have to blow that up. I mean, but look at these faces. Oh, this guy right here too. Yeah. Definitely had too much caffeine that day. I think it was like 1 for you, 1 for me. Another shot of espresso. Yeah. And I mean, just the joy on our faces as we were able to bless those in need, where we said, hey, we're going to take a Sunday and we're not going to make it about us, but we're going to make it about those around us who are in need. Then we had Angel Tree. I believe we had over 20 children sponsored, parents who were incarcerated. We were able to provide gifts in the name of the parent to children so that at Christmas time they were able to receive a present from their parents. And then a few other highlights from last year. Elle, who unfortunately is sick this morning, she took over as our worship leader. I believe it was in November. We had amazing growth of our children's ministry. We have Lois, who has been overseeing that for about 2 plus 3, 4, I can't even, my goodness, remember the number of years. Everything begins to blend together. I don't know if that's a product of age or I don't know what it is, but she has been going on for years, and then Christine stepped in and really helped Lois over the summer. Jeanette's been helping out. We have Laura, who's not here today, and it's been amazing just to see the growth of the kids who are coming out, the number of kids, but then also the volunteers and the teachers who are involved in that, which is a very important part of the ministry at Awaken. And then last year, we also were able to transition from being part of a denomination to a non-denominational church. And that was a huge step for us at Awaken and a big shift that started last year, and we are now fully non-denominational. Now, let's talk about some goals for 2025. First goal, we have a financial goal, and these are goals that we as a board came up with over the past 2 months of discussing and praying about where we would like to see Awaken go and what we hope to see happen at Awaken in 2025. One of our goals is a financial goal, which is to have our offerings match our expenses. Christine, right after the service, for the meeting portion, Christine is our treasurer. She's been doing an amazing job as our treasurer. 3 years, is it 3 years? Going on 3 years, and Christine has worked tirelessly, especially over the past couple of weeks. I feel like I have to text her or call her pretty much every day. For the past month, I feel like I've been in constant communication with Christine because there's been so many different moving pieces with the transition, and she's always been up for it and is like, hey, I'll get right on it. Let me see what I can do. And so a huge reason why we've been able to make this transition and why it's been so seamless is because of Christine's hard work. So please, I just want to recognize Christine for everything that she's put into Awaken. Now, as Christine will talk about, one of the things that that's happened with Awaken is we've been operating a bit with a deficit over the past couple of years. And so our hope is that this is the year when we have our offerings match our expenses. And we'll look through all those numbers here after the meeting. One of our hopes, one of our prayers is that we would continue to grow as we have been doing, and that as we grow, that we're able to then get to that point where our offerings match our expenses. So that is one goal, and we have a few different ways in which we are actively attempting to grow, which we'll get to here in a moment. Then, our second goal of 2025 is to continue growing our volunteer base. A few different places, areas where we need volunteers. We have our Sunday morning setup. Ted has been shouldering the weight of the Sunday morning setup for 4 years, 5 years. How long has Ben been gone? Ben did a lot. Many of you are familiar with Ben. He did a lot of the setup. And then Ted took over from Ben. Debbie helps with our setup. But we could use some more help getting everything set up and ready to go. We have a very minimal setup. So that's about 9:15 in the morning, 9:20 in the morning. We come, and then we set all these speakers up. So if you are able to help with that, please, you can speak to Ted about that one. We're still looking for some more kids teachers, so we have enough of a rotation going around so that all of our teachers are able to also be in at the service, and they're not always back with the kids. If you have a heart to teach the kids, if you'd like to get involved with that, whether it's every other month, whatever that might, once a quarter, whatever it might look like, we could definitely use some more kids teachers. We have lesson plans. We bought a whole curriculum for the year, so you don't need to create any material. Everything is provided. You would just kind of pick and choose a little bit, and then you'd be in there with the kids in order to teach and help them grow in their journey with Jesus. Then we have Sunday morning greeters, which this is an area that we would like to move into. Sometimes we have greeters, but we would like every single week to have greeters so that whenever you come through the door, or if there are new people who come through the door, they see smiling, overly caffeinated faces that can help show them where to move around in the theater and where Awaken is. Then this is another goal, pictures and online posting. I am the worst at documenting and taking pictures. I am terrible. I will admit it. So I need your help in order to take pictures so that we can post online and show others, hey, this is the party, this is what's happening, here's the celebration of Awaken. So if you have an interest in just taking pictures and documenting the life of Awaken and occasionally helping post those online, we could definitely use some help with that. And then we are looking for a co-treasurer who would work alongside Christine with the intention of then transitioning this person into the treasurer position by potentially January of 2026. So if you have an interest in that, that's something that you would like to be involved with, you can come speak to me, you can talk to Christine, and we would get you set up with that. Then, as I mentioned, our third goal, because we think this is very important, especially because we've had a new website that was just created, and the way in which the website works, we have someone who's doing a lot of behind-the-scene things, Google Ads, SEO, things that I know nothing about, but that help if people are searching for a church, that Awaken shows up at the top. So we are looking for a team to create a team to document and celebrate the life of Awaken through taking pictures intentionally and occasional social media posts. Then our fourth goal, continued involvement with social and service events. We showed some pictures of the things that we were involved in last year, and we want to continue having these social events and service events. A few ideas, things that we are looking to do for this year is to have, the women got to have their fun, so we want to have a men's gathering or men's lunch or something, possibly after church on a Sunday. We're thinking about this idea of small dinners, which what this is certain people you would sign up to host, and then you can tell us how many people you can host in your home, and then everyone else would sign up, and we would randomly assign people to different homes so that you would then get a chance to meet different people at Awaken, to have a conversation, and to share a meal together. So look for information about that coming soon as well. And then we want to continue blessing the world. This year, one of the ideas was to also incorporate a visit to a soup kitchen. So we are looking to be involved with some more organizations in our area so that we can give back. Any ideas you have for service or social events, please let me know those ideas. And if you have an interest in help leading something up, help leading up one of these events that we are involved in, please come see me as well, because we would like to also involve you in the planning process for it. And then our fifth goal is we would like to host one family event. I showed a picture last week about when we were in White Plains. We hosted a movie night for all the families of White Plains. We want to do something like that again. Maybe it's hosting a movie night here at Look. Maybe it's going and having a free-for-all somewhere. Whatever it happens to be, we will plan this one, but we want one family event for the people that we know, for people in the community where others can come, and that we can just bless others with an event that is sponsored by Awaken. Now, this is a lot of where we would like to go, but what I would like to close with for our sermon, as we then will move into the next portion, is why we keep going and why I keep going. And I had asked you if anyone had any stories of transformation, about how they had been transformed through the life of Awaken. And I actually found myself tearing up a little bit this week as these stories came in, as you shared what this church has meant to you and what this community has meant to you. And for me, it's always the stories. It's seeing the pictures and what we've done together, and that's a huge part of like the joy at the Stuff Assured and having everyone just so filled with life. And then I read these stories, and one came in this morning through email. Looking back over all the years we've been involved and invested in Awaken, I see consistency as a huge part of my relationship with God. There have been ups and downs in our close-knit congregation. All along, there are fellow worshipers and Dave at the forefront. COVID hurt us all collectively and in various ways individually. I myself was in check and felt as if drowning, trying to get through each day, feeling detached from everyone. I will never forget the consistency in Awaken, in being available, in reaching out, in providing whatever could be provided. The example of consistent leadership and giving, praying, and thinking of others is powerful every year. The highlight for me, I guess, of last year was the women's gatherings. At these gatherings, we enjoyed each other's company and got to know more about each other through games and fellowship. We were connecting on a deeper level than just a quick hi before or after church. Out of our last meeting was birthed an idea of starting a Bible study. That idea of Heather's has now become a reality. We are studying the book of Matthew. We've had one in-person and one study online with great success. The transformation of Awaken is truly in the hearts of many people at the urging of the Spirit and tapping into their spiritual gifts to glorify God. I can see it in the sermons, the dedication and commitment of the board and our treasurer, Heather giving us the idea of women's gatherings in a Bible study, Lois, Christine, Jeanette, and Laura on the children's ministry, Joe and Sammy on giving sermons, Debbie leading community group, Ted with being so faithful on setting up most Sundays. Awaken has been truly blessed with God's people seeking to know him and please him. This is a big part of what helps to strengthen my faith. Another one. Due to an incident at a church I attended for a number of years, I shied away from that church and stopped going to church at all. After many years, I realized I missed church and sought to find another to attend. I found Awaken in 2016, and because of the welcoming nature of the community, I started attending church again. Almost 10 years later, and I'm still here. I look forward to church and continued growth in my faith. Awaken changed my view on church, and I'm so grateful for that. Another. Before coming to Awaken, I felt lost in my faith and disconnected from community. From the moment I walked in, I experienced genuine connection and a renewed focus on Jesus. The sermons brought the word to life, and being part of a small group gave me the support and encouragement I needed. Through Awaken, I've grown closer to Christ, found a family in the church community, and rediscovered purpose in his word. Here's another. Awaken has literally awakened my spiritual curiosity. At first, my faith in religion was at an all-time low, considering the negative events that occurred in my life. I felt if there was a God or a greater being, then why was he putting me through all of these hardships? I was in a dark place for a long time. I felt as if the world had it out for me. I pushed away so many people who cared so much about me. All of these bad experiences made me into a bitter person. But one day, I was sitting at home, we discovered Awaken Westchester. When I heard Dave speak about the mission with such passion and such empathy, I thought to myself, maybe there's another way to worship in more of a connecting way. When I found out about stuffing t-shirts for Thanksgiving, I was completely on board. This was finally my opportunity to give back to the world. Meeting everybody for the first time, everybody was so warm and welcoming. I have not experienced that in a long time, and honestly, it was nice that people genuinely wanted to get to know me. I felt this strange feeling of warmth and comfort doing the right thing. Granted, I've had my fair share of negative experiences happen after my discovery of Awaken, but now I know there's a place where I am truly comforted. Taking the time away from my problems to reflect and acknowledge them. The sermons I've heard so far have truly inspired me to become a better version of myself. They've shown me the value of being true and genuine, that the right thing will always come to you if you remain pure and honest to yourself. There was a while when I saw myself going to darkness, but now, thanks to the help and guidance of Awaken, I can finally see the light again, that life isn't always bad. There's still good amongst the rough times. So I want to thank you. This means much more than I could have ever imagined. And one more. Awaken has shifted not only the way I think about myself, about the world, and about God, but it shifted my attitude toward others. I felt more peace around strangers, more called to learning people's stories, to hearing about people's ups and downs, and loving people regardless of where they come from. When I see those in need, I used to think, wow, that person is a threat to my security. No more. I feel called to bringing those up in the community more and more each day. Awaken has given me actionable steps to take when I am faced with hardship. It's allowed me to hear God's voice through the Holy Spirit. It's no wonder the church is named Awaken, because I felt something stir within me that hasn't been able to go to sleep since being a part of this community. My life has been altered in such a positive way since knowing this group, this community, and the communities that we've served. I'll always miss being a part of this church. I will miss worshiping with these fellow Christians, and I will especially miss the reclining seats. That's why I keep going. It's why we keep giving to Awaken, so that we can have this space together, to be encouraged, to have hope, to continue helping all of us hear God's voice, so that others can have stories like these. So I began it when I did 2010, and why it still matters, why it's still important. And thank you so much for sharing these stories. Thank you so much for your generosity that has allowed Awaken to continue for all these years and keep following where God is leading. And my prayer is that we would keep moving forward together. So as the sermon was titled, of course, with the exclamation point, let's keep going. Let's keep having a party, having that celebration, and creating intentionally a space where we can receive healing in the community that we all need and that others need as well.